Welcome back to what now is Paxton's YouTube channel. Today we're back working on Paxton, and I have a very interesting video for you guys today. As you can see, I have these super nice, cool ramps that I just got in. They give me like a ton of room to work under the car, and they're the best solution I could find for cheap, other than buying a whole car lift. So, this works great. So today we're going to be underneath Paxton, working on the clutch. And I know this doesn't look like a whole lot of room, but it's a lot more than what I had before. So our clutch is in that housing right there, but to get to it, there's a lot of things we're gonna have to remove. This is the starter right here. It needs to come out, as well as the exhaust, probably all the way down. I'm going to have to remove it to get in this area. The reason I am replacing the clutch on Paxton is it sounds really weird and grinds a lot, especially going into first gear. I got the new clutch kit in, and it's time to get it put inside Paxton. I'm gonna do my best to record this kind of stuff, but it might be a little bit difficult, so I'll try my best to show it. Let's get started. So the first step is to get the exhaust and that starter out of the way, and then we'll see where to go from there. Alright, so I got a clearance, I got the exhaust out of the way, and I got that starter out of the way. Now I can get up into here, into this shaft. I gotta take this off so I can finally get in here to replace the clutch and a couple other things. Let's get to it. So, I finally got that bell housing off. It has been about a week, and this involved a lot more stuff than I thought it would, just to get to the clutch. Let me see if I can explain from underneath the car. So as you can see here, this is what was behind that bell housing I was trying to get off. You could probably see in the time lapse. And this is what we need to replace, as well as we're going to be replacing this bearing, and I think we're gonna have to replace the flywheel, because as you can see right there, there's a missing tooth. I don't know how dire that is, and these are like $600 each, so I really didn't want to do that, but I think we're probably going to end up doing that. As well as we'll be replacing the rear main seal behind all this. Now, why did it take me a week to get to this point? Let me explain. So the bell housing, which is right there, so painful. It wouldn't slide back because this torsion bar, torque tube, whatever you want to call it, goes all the way back to the gearbox, transmission, whatever you want to call it. In order to move this back so you can move the bell housing back so you can access the clutch, you have to come all the way down here to the gearbox, this giant thing, the transmission, and you have to completely remove it, bring it down, so this can move back, which is the torque tube. You can move that back. So up front, you can move this tube back, which will allow you to finally get the bell housing off. So I can finally access just this clutch. It was a ton of work. But now that we're to this point, we can finally replace the clutch. We'll probably have to get that new flywheel. And during the process, I broke my slave cylinder, so I've got a new one coming in. So it's time to get all this off and get everything replaced. And then we'll have to reassemble the transmission, put the torque tube back, and then put everything for this bell housing back on. It's gonna be just as long of a process, I'm sure. Let's get started. 2 weeks later, 2 weeks of work, and the flywheel is finally loose. Let's take this thing off. It's finally out. And now we can replace the rear main seal. As you can see, it definitely has been leaking, so it's a good thing we went ahead and did this. And then it'll be time for reassembly. Finally, after 2 weeks of working and waiting, the flywheel is polished and looking great. Done by a professional, I will say. And the clutch fits perfectly in, as well as the new pressure plate. And I just got in the last part that I was waiting for, which is that broken starter ring, and it fits absolutely beautifully. So after several weeks of waiting, I finally have all the parts I need to put old Paxton back together. Okay, so the resurfaced flywheel, the clutch plate, the clutch pressure plate thing, and 2 of the new bearings and the seal are replaced, as well as this is the new used starter ring. So it's time to get the bell housing back on, which is probably the hardest part of this whole process, and hopefully I never see this clutch again. Okay, as a bit of an update, I got the torque tube pushed back in, I got the new slave cylinder, and I got the bell housing back on, and it went on a lot easier than it came off. So this is great news, because I really thought this was going to be hard, the hardest part of putting it back together. But as you can see, everything's back together. You can see that new ring through the starter hole right there. We'll get that back on after we tighten down these torque tube bolts. But the next step is to come down to this side and get the transmission back in. So I'm going to link that up to this housing once again, and then we can hook everything else back up, and we will be done with the clutch. Finally. Okay, it has been 3 weeks since the last update video, but finally I believe everything is hooked back up, even back here. Here's the transmission. I don't have the CV joints hooked up yet, just because I want to do a quick test to make sure everything's going, so we don't accidentally roll off the ramps, because that would be terrible. I'm pretty sure everything is hooked up. I could be missing something. That's why the CV joints aren't correctly hooked up yet. But it's time to do our first test. I've got to oil it up because I drained all the oil at one point. So we'll be putting fresh oil in and then hopefully getting a test. Start the car. Oof, big moment, big moment. Oh, it feels nice to be out from under that car. It really, really does. Let's get some oil in Paxton and we'll give her a start. Okay, we're just gonna do a quick Okay, so it's not starting for some reason, but it is cranking, so mostly everything's working. I've probably just got like a ground wire unplugged or something. Once I figure out what the problem is, I'll be right back. As you can hear there, the car is now running, and it is running great. Back to how it was. And in case you were wondering what the problem was, there are two little sensors that come off of that bell housing that we had so much trouble with. They are like the fuel sensors. They regulate how much fuel and air mixture is going on, and those two little sensors are what was causing my problems. First, I had them switched around. That new gear we put on actually grinded that sensor off and ruined it, so I had to order 2 new ones. Apparently, this is a problem that people have a lot. So if you're gonna get one of these Porsches, just go ahead and replace both of those sensors. They're only like 60 bucks for both, and it makes the car run really, really nice, and you eliminate that issue. So we've got the car running great, and I've done several little drives. Everything seems pretty good. Unfortunately, we still do have that grind. It is apparently a synchros gear down in the transmission. At least we know now everything under that bell housing, the clutch, all those bearings we replaced, and that gear that had the broken tooth, everything is clean and replaced and brand new. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below, and I will be so happy to answer them. Now that I know how to do this process, maybe I can try and help others out. Once again, I'll be linking some good videos down in the description below if you need help doing this yourself. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.